it's hard for me to pronounce that phrase. So let's welcome Nancy with a warm round of applause, please.
Good morning, everyone here and in Zoom land, which is over there. I am very moved to be in this room. This is a room that I've been coming in and out of for almost 45 years in many different ways and times. And this is the first time I've been in this room since the pandemic, so I'm very happy to be here. Far before I had any of those credentials, my credential is I'm a person. I'm a mom, I'm a grandma, I'm a friend, I'm a human being along the path traveling with each and every one of you. I want to start today, that was a great song, whoever picked that out. Perfecto? Giovanna? Oh, right on. The first story I want to tell you about togetherness is really about my togetherness, really not mine. This is, the building here is at Temple Bethor. And we have had a together relationship with Hope4Life for 4 years that is extremely meaningful, growing, and I have the privilege of actually being the first Bethor member that has been invited to bridge and to speak to you, from the heart and to share. And I'm very, very honored to do that at this time. And the relationship that we have with Hope4Life is something to behold. You almost have to come on this campus and be with us. But all I can tell you is that for 4 years, anytime we needed anything, we were setting something up, we had an event, somebody from Hope4Life was there and helping us. So I think it's really just a God thing that we're presenting on togetherness and connection. And I won't leave out, there's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but I'm putting loneliness in the middle. I know we don't usually do that. But today is the day we're bringing that out of the dark, and we're going to talk about loneliness because it's so important and so much there all the time. So that was the really good starting part because I wouldn't be here were it not for this relationship. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. I've been doing this 40 plus years. I came into the field during Vietnam. And I came into the world as an occupational therapist in the VA hospital. So the veterans taught me almost everything I know, and particularly what I know about trauma and being with people. So my beginnings began in trauma. And also it's kind of interesting when I was reflecting about being with you today, I remembered that when I moved here at 14 years old from Pennsylvania, we moved into Miami, and it had just been Hurricane Donna. It was 1960, and I didn't know from hurricanes. And it's kind of an interesting thought to begin of because we're in the middle of something like a pandemic, and I didn't have anything to compare this to, did any of us, other than comparing it maybe to Andrew, but even Andrew didn't last this long, like 13, 14 months. And it was interesting because when we came to Miami, we were staying at this motel over on the beach, kind of a family motel. And we had 2 or 3 rooms, my mom, my dad, and brother. And then there was 4 other rooms, and there was a family staying there. And their home had been devastated in Hurricane Donna. And I think about this now, I didn't know much what that meant. But it's interesting because that family, those people, the kids and the parents, became my parents' best friends. And we became very close with that family. So this is, kind of how things happen. How did that beginning bring you forward? So I was an occupational therapist, mostly in psychiatry, and then I went on to become a marriage and family therapist and a counselor. And here's my best story about all those initials. In 2015, my mom was still alive, and I said, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to go up to Lenox, Massachusetts. I'm very excited about positive psychology, and I just want to learn all about it. And I'm going to get another credential." And she said to me, "What? Another credential?" And she looked at me and she said, "Are you going to get any more money because you have this?" And I said, No, no, Mom, but I'm getting another one. So she really was interested. She said, well, you're going to need a wheelbarrow. But the credentials have nothing to do with life experience, nothing. And really, I am really who I am today because of all of you and the people I work with. And I see what we do in this room, and all of us is one, the infinity sign. I love the infinity sign. It goes like this. I'm on one side of that, and everyone I've worked with. And sometimes I feel like my clients bring me such gifts, and it's a growing experience. It's not a we and they, it's us. And that's the spirit that I come to you with today. So when I went up to go to get certified in positive psychology up in Lenox in 2015, I was very intrigued, and one of the reasons I wanted to learn positive psychology was, obviously it was positive, but that wasn't the other reason. It was very much tied in with all of the new research about how we work in the brain, and one of the greatest discoveries, that many people think it's the probably the most important medical discovery in 400 years. And what we learned is the brain can change throughout life. We used to think when people got to be, my age or my grandma's age, that it was inevitable that you were going to go downhill and get something and like that. But it was it's called neuroplasticity, that's the fancy word. But the amazing thing is that we can change throughout life. So as I'm talking and we're sharing today, I really want you to remember, and this is one of the wonderful sayings that we use in positive psychology, and I'm sure here, at every moment you have a choice. At every moment you have a choice. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is going to help you fine-tune and take a little bit of a deeper dive into what are the choices that we are making. We've had to make a lot of different choices. We've had to be extremely creative in this world that's changed so much. So a lot of this is going to be about helping you realize you do have a choice at every moment. And I know having a choice at every moment is a huge piece of change. So I have 3 basic goals. I always say I have the goal of having a meaningful relationship with you, the people in the group. Hopefully this will be a meaningful, that's my goal, to have a meaningful human connection, because that's what we need. That's what we need. That's what sustains us. The other is, one thing, my desire, and if I do my job well, is to help you really be able to look at loneliness as just another feeling that's important, because there's a lot of shame around loneliness. And I've really noticed in the past 14 months, I've had the honor to do over 100 groups with my Temple Beth Or community and other communities. And the people very rarely will talk about loneliness right up front, So I want to normalize that in the same way that Brene Brown did, talking about shame, bringing it out of the closet. So hopefully in the afternoon we're going to be doing looking at our specific circles of connection. I really want you to be on the eye, the look for, because loneliness doesn't always show up directly. It kind of can masquerade and hide in the closet. But I really want you to tune into where have been your spots of loneliness. And just to kind of put it in a bigger context, we all know, we've been reading about it, no matter what we do for a living, addiction is up, alcohol is up, overdoses are up, depression, anxiety. And even in the joking way, we do joke about this a lot on calls. We talk jokingly and say about, oh, I've got my COVID 10 pounds. You know what I mean? I do. And my friends, and even some of my guy friends that are always slender, they've gained some COVID pounds. Well, as I took a deeper dive into this book, I think that's about loneliness. I was joking and say I've been living in my kitchen. That's where my computer is. But I don't think it's just because I'm living in my kitchen. So I think the eating is also, it's one of those low-level addictions that I certainly can normalize. So I think the loneliness is everywhere. So I want to bring it out of the closet as something extremely important to be able to talk about and to be able to talk about openly. Let's see, I'm going to go over and look at note card and see what else I want to say here. The other thing that's really important. I had somebody say to me, I don't even remember, a few weeks ago, somebody said to me, God, and I'm not being judgmental about this, it's just, boy, this has really been a wasted year. And I didn't say anything much, just kind of was listening to whatever they were, not a client, just somebody in the world, we were wasted year. And it got me to thinking, and I've been thinking about this for quite a while. This has been, I have to say, one of the best years of my life, despite COVID. And one of my mentors, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, who is one of the prominent people that he certified me about happiness, he gave a talk in the middle of all this, in the middle of the pandemic, and he said this phrase, and it just captivated me, and the phrase was, never let a good crisis go to waste. I love it. Never let a good crisis go to waste. And I'm a wordster. Sometimes I'll fall in love with some words. I love those words. And I had them, and so it turns out it's a pretty famous phrase. He didn't invent it. It's been used in politics. It's been used in all kinds of ways. It even roots back to Napoleonic days. And really just captivated me. So that became the focus for several columns and a couple workshops that I did leading up to this. And what's that about? So, because this is never let a crisis go to waste, is about how do we take, I call them the golden nuggets, how do we sift through? So, because a lot of wonderful, amazing things have happened in this last 14 months that have to do with intimacy, slowing down, connections, relationships. I think I've met more people, not just online, but in my neighborhood that I walked by before, made a dear friend. So there's many wonderful things that we want to hold on to. And we want to, we live life in the transitions. And we're in a very huge transition right now about, we don't know exactly how are we going to be, what's the world going to look like, we don't know all of these things. So, getting back to never let a crisis go to waste, this got me really thinking, and why I wanted to talk with people about, and this workshop also is an extension of that, is what of our last 14 months do we want to hold on to because it's good, and because it was connecting, and because it was meaningful, and for so many reasons that you're going to tell me. And I don't want to negate, a lot of people sometimes think that positive psychology is about ignoring. Yes, I'm very aware of all of the sickness and the death and all of the political, and that's not our focus today. So it's not like let's pour sugar on all that and forget it's there. We know it's there, and that's had its coverage, and the power of the word "and." That's not our focus today. So I just want to know and mark that. And it's an interesting, if you want to think about the infinity sign again, I don't know if you've noticed it, but I've noticed that my times of greatest growth always emerge out of some deep pain spot, deep trauma spot. And that's where, where post-traumatic stress disorder becomes post-traumatic growth. That's where we really are on that learning curve. And that's where I'm kind of hoping to elevate us today to continue on that journey. Because as human beings, and we're all amazingly human, we're human, it's hard. Sometimes I say, why do I not remember my mask? I've been wearing this thing, but I still forget my mask. Where is it? And that's just a small example. We are amazingly, we like to go back to our set point. So this is also kind of to put us on notice about, I don't want to go back to that set point, where I was so busy, that I didn't have time to do some of the amazing things, that walking in the neighborhood with friends, having the time to write. But it is human nature to go back to that set point, to go unconscious, to get back into those habits. So this is also just some infusion, some elevation to help us say, let's not go back to that unconscious, just automatic thinking set point. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I got into this particular book, which is, and we'll start this is this book together. The Healing Power of Human Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World. Okay, I think we'll put this. So, there he is. So one of my girlfriends said to me, you have to read this book, you know, and I looked at it, and it's nice we can look things up online, and I looked at it and I said, wow, that looks amazing. And I was pretty riveted to the sometimes lonely world. So this is Dr. Vivek Murthy. He happens to currently be our Surgeon General, which is a fancy name for, he's America's doctor. A lot of people know who the Surgeon General is because the name is on the cigarette package, and we've heard a lot from America's doctors in this last year with COVID. So Vivek Murthy, he actually grew up a few blocks from here. His parents still live in the neighborhood. So he was Surgeon General under President Obama, and he is again our Surgeon General. And I think before the day is over, you will feel like I feel, that I'm so glad he's there. He's an amazing man. Undergraduate Harvard, medical school, MBA at Yale, but beyond his credentials, when you read this book, he is a man of love, he is a man of warmth. I've cried reading this book. I'm going to read, I could cry thinking of it. I'll tell you how this book happened for him. When he was appointed during his time with President Obama, he did something extremely unusual, I think. He said, before I get into this office, he says, I'm going to take a listening tour. A listening tour. Who does that in politics? I'm going to take a listening tour around the United States and talk to people. It's pretty amazing, right? That says something about who he is. And he says, because I want to find out what are people worried about. Now, usually America's doctor, our Surgeon General, you think they're going to deal with things like our major killers, heart disease, diabetes, certainly the opioid problem, addiction, obesity, all those common things that we deal with and that are our biggest, health risks. So he did this tour, and he completed this tour, and this book was published in March, the month that COVID was just popping into our worlds. Remember March, somewhere in March.
March 13th.
Yeah, March, that's my day too. I was going to say, someday in March, each of us went home to learn to live. Right. So Dr. Murthy's book was written pre-COVID, and that was profound to me, and I'm going to tell you what riveted me. So his conclusion, after going all over the country, and I won't have time to share the tremendously warming stories about real people doing things around connection. I'll share a few. He concluded that the number one problem in the country was loneliness. Loneliness. He thought that was behind even all of the medical conditions, heart, cardiac, obesity, addiction. The underlying problem was loneliness. Now that's pretty darn profound to me. And that he said that before COVID. So my brain went to, if loneliness was the number one, the epidemic cause of things before COVID, where are we now? So this is what just kind of really pulled me in to say, I want to know what this guy says. So thank you, Dr. Murthy, for allowing me and others, and I hope I can kind of Johnny Appleseed you in your world and in your family, to not be afraid to ask people, what are you struggling with? What do you feel lonely about? So it can become a normal kind of question. So I'm curious, do you all think that's pretty amazing?
It is.
Yes.
Yeah. So, does that surprise anyone in the room? No.
We have spoken about him, and we have played him in our classes. Clips from him talking about loneliness,
So this community, you were very aware of it. Anybody else? Was anybody else surprised that a man of that stature in that political position, a doctor, that he would come to that conclusion? Did it surprise him?
It surprises me because most of the time when they take a political position like that, it's just the glory of the position, and rarely do they have any insight. So it shows that the doctor has some insight into something that's important to Americans. I'm assuming particularly for older Americans who find themselves very lonely at times.
Wonderful comment. And I'm going to say two things about it. This loneliness knows no color, age, anything distinction, just to tell you. And I'll tell you why Dr. Murthy, not why, but how, what made him tuned in. So Dr. Murthy and his family moved to this Palmetto area when he was a kid. And his father's a physician, and they were the only Indian family. And I will tell you back then, because I lived here back then, this was kind of just a white enclave, it wasn't even as multicultural as now. So as the only Indian family, and he talks about this in the book, it was an interesting and a beautiful share, because despite he has a very loving family, and despite that he grew up, very well with a lot of love and certainly had, good education and privilege, he talks about two things, the loneliness and the bullying. He was very much bullied in school, and how lonely he felt. And he couldn't talk about it. He didn't even talk about it to his parents, because he's not supposed to feel lonely. You've got this loving parent and sister and a very, very close Indian family. And he didn't even have it identified. So it's the bullying and the loneliness that were core. It happened to him. It wasn't just an intellectual thing that I'm sure, as many of us do, we put these things together, as life happens. And as I said to you, loneliness has many masquerades. And that's another point that I hope by the end of our time together, you'll be aware that it's not always just out there and saying I'm lonely. So there's a lot of masquerades. Thank you for that point. Let's see. Okay, the next slide. Let's see. Okay, so what does the Surgeon General do? Well, the Surgeon General, he is responsible for keeping America informed of scientific things. I already told you that he's in charge of critical public health issues like COVID, like heart, all the things, the general things that go on. Let's see. And he deals with not just the common issues, but these kinds of things that happen that are pandemic. And the big thing that he's really done for all of us is he's made us aware, and this phrase, suffering in isolation, I know is something that certainly isn't just about this kind of loneliness. I think anyone who experiences depression, and I've experienced depression, anxiety, any form of emotional distress, addiction, whatever. I think anybody that is in this position can identify with suffering and isolation. But he particularly is coming off this this listening tour and really wanted us to become aware of that there are so many people suffering in isolation, and they think they're the only ones. Does that sound familiar? Right? It reminds me a lot of Brene Brown's book about shame. I thought I was the only one. So this is his mission, which I'm kind of taking and making part of our mission, for people to realize that they're not alone. Let's see if I can do this beautiful quote. Remember this one thing. Sometimes people need a story more than they need food. We put stories in each other's hearts, and this is the way that we take care of each other. That's about how it goes. That's from a children's book called Crow and Weasel. So we're going to be I'm going to be sharing some stories from my heart, and the stories that we tell, and the ways we share, whether it's in the rooms, in this room, in a 12-step room with our family, these stories that we tell from our heart are extremely healing. And what we're adding onto this is not just talking about stories about our problem or our addiction, but also talking about our stories of loneliness. Very, very important too. Because if I'm brave enough and you're brave enough to talk about my loneliness, or to talk openly about, I have depression. That was something I didn't talk about for decades. I'm not going to say as a therapist, I'm going to say I have depression, but why not? I do. So it's made me really good at what I do. I know what it's like. So if we can be courageous and brave enough to share our stories of loneliness, it allows other people to come out and share their stories of loneliness. So we don't have to suffer in isolation. One of the wonderful people in positive psychology is Dr. Barbara Fredrickson. Have you done anything on the positive emotions here? Well, she's the gal that put positive emotions on the map. I like this too, joy, happiness, love, hope. Done a lot of research on the importance of positive, emotions. So this is also a very, very important part of what we do, because it's the positive emotions. It's interesting. The positive emotions help us connect and make us very pro-social and incline us to move towards each other. So it needs to be a mix of all of those things. So let's see. Next slide, please. So here's, I'm going to admit, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, he was my first therapist as a kid. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and he had his first show in Pittsburgh, KDKA. And yeah, I love Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was really, really, really deep. He was an Episcopal minister, you know that? Yeah. And he was allowed by his church, he was allowed and given the ministry of serving children on TV. Pretty unusual, right? It's awesome. So, he did really tough things. Like when Kennedy was killed, he came on TV and talked to the little children about it. And the phrase that I love, because it's real, and that's what we're doing today, anything that is mentionable. In other words, if we can talk about it, if we can put it into words, it becomes manageable. And that's kind of what we're doing today. And that's a very simple phrase, but it's so true. Because if you think about it, when I'm dealing with things alone and they're inside my head can be a scary place. It's dark, there's nothing getting in there but my head. So when we get things out of our head and we share them to people that have warm eyes, warm eyes, and they're connecting with us, and they really want to hear, we can really hear what's in our head, and it gets some space, and we give it some words. And that's pretty profound, to be able to give things some words. And once we have the words, we have the ability to share it and to also talk it through, because we need words, as long as it's swimming around in our head. So if anything that is mentionable can be more managed. Okay. Okay, before I go into this, I want to make one connection that I haven't made yet. I want to bring back the infinity sign. I love the infinity sign. It's so good for so many things, beginning and the end, God, everything. So togetherness and connection are evolutionary, biologically, in every way tied in with loneliness. You can't have one without the other. So they're connected. They're a duo, And so I want you to think of them together, and I want you to know that it's normal. Everybody feels lonely in some ways. And this afternoon, when we're going to do some experiential, we're going to take a look into specific ways that we're lonely, because it's just not non-specific loneliness. For instance, I'm not typically lonely. I've been very busy. I have a lot. But I'm very, very lonely, specifically for my kids in Boston. I haven't seen my son, my daughter, my grandson for like 16 months. So it's a very specific loneliness. And a lot of times that's what we have to look for. Where are our specific lonelinesses? Who do we want to connect with? So we're going to be looking at that this afternoon. So I've said, so I want you to remember, you can't have together and connection without loneliness. And here, in a very simple way, I'm going to see if I can do this simply. When you think of the days back when we were tribes, and we were wandering around in tribes, if somebody or an animal got separated from the tribe and was alone, they were in danger, right? You could be killed, you're alone, you don't have the tribe to protect you. So we have this hardwired, built-in thing for loneliness. So here's what happens when we get lonely. And this happens today, we're not the tribe, which is when we're lonely, so the animal or the person had to be very hypervigilant, had to look around. I'm alone now. So I got to look around, I feel threatened, I got to watch, I got to be careful. And so a whole slew of chemical things start happening in our brain and body that put us in this state of hypervigilance and threat. And I'll just keep it kind of simple. To that same degree, if you think of that as a template, it kind of helps you understand. And when we're lonely, we are a little jittery and a little nervous, and we might feel threatened by people. And this is why it's not so easy. Sometimes you think it's easy to say to somebody that's really feeling lonely and you might not recognize it, oh, just come to the group, come and be with the group. And a lot of times they won't, you think they won't, but a lot of times they can't. Which is why communities of loving people, whether it's Hope4Life or whoever you are, or just families, that's why we gotta see where the lonely people are. We gotta help them, because there is this biochemical evolutionary process going on inside their brain that makes it very difficult. Are you with me on that?
Yes.
So I wanted you to understand that, because that was very useful, when I read that, and it made me really understand the power, like, of 12-step programs. I know a lot about 12-step programs because I've been in a lot of them, about, the reaching out and, how we help members and that reach out. And you'll also notice there's some signs around here. Happy to chat. I'll tell you where those came from. We need to invite people to speak to us. We need to reach out and take their hand. They can't always come to us. So today, I think I said quite a bit about this. America's epidemic of loneliness. It is the unspoken mental health condition. I think not just during the pandemic, but I think it's always. And I certainly think loneliness is under addiction and so many things, but not talked about openly. So this was my prayer. I didn't say it this morning. So let us elevate our loneliness through God's light and our love and connection. Loneliness is the signal to join in community together. So loneliness, think of it as that signal. And that initially it's to protect, the person wants to protect, but see it as our signal to reach out and help that person connect and come into community. Okay, Emmanuel, next. I wanted to make some distinctions here that I think are common things that we talk about. And I wanted to distinguish between loneliness, isolation, and solitude. Kind of, what do they mean and how are they different? So loneliness, as I kind of alluded to, loneliness is it's a very subjective experience. You can't look at someone and know they're lonely, because their life could be very full of people, so it can be very deceptive. So it's a very subjective feeling. And essentially what it's about, it's kind of like I said, you feel cut off from the people with whom you belong. And there's that missing feeling of closeness and trust and genuine friends. And we're going to get into it a little. So in other words, I'm not lonely in general, but I am missing that specific connection, that I have with my family that I haven't seen. And I am missing another type of loneliness I have. I was very aware of when I walked into this room, because this is a room I've been in worshiping for, as I said, 40 plus years. And I started to cry a little, because I had not been in this room with the people from Temple Beth Or, because we're not ready as a community to come back in space. So I have some very specific loneliness for that community to be together. So you got to really decipher, and you will be able to by the end of today, about what's your loneliness. And we can have different kinds of loneliness. So the first loneliness that I was talking about was really that intimate emotional loneliness, like the one I feel for my family that's up in Boston that I haven't seen, or some of my best friends in New York that I haven't seen because we're in Zoomville together. And then I named kind of a collective loneliness I feel, a community loneliness of not being able to be, with my peeps, in this room. So we'll get a little more into that. Yes, did you?
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know how, oh.
Thank you, Louis.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
He doesn't need it.
Good job.
We do this all day, every day, and I'm listening to Nancy, and I'm having like 1,000 questions. On Zoom, I don't know, can they hear me on Zoom?
No.
You're too far. Oh, too
That's
far.
why
I
you
thought this
needed
was a
the-
real powerful
Jackie,
mic.
you needed
Come
the
over
mic.
here.
I thought this was a, no, I just, I'm listening to you,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like being blown away by some of the stuff you're saying,
Question away.
Yeah, no, I just wanted people to know that she's saying some pretty important stuff, And this is about getting freedom, you know. So if you all have some questions.
Please, I'm happy if you have
Um,
questions, I can stop.
You know,
at the end.
after the break, we're gonna do this experiential thing with
Right.
everyone. I don't want people to disappear because we're gonna do this practically, not only talk about it in theory. But in the meanwhile, she's saying some pretty deep stuff, and I know some of your stories, you know. She's even talking about specific loneliness. You know, like, I'm not lonely, but I'm lonely for this, you know.
I have a question.
Good, I'm glad. Thank God. I have so many. I'm the only one in
I
the
didn't know
room.
we can interrupt.
Okay, you're.
Well,
gonna do
no,
it.
I think y'all,
You can interrupt
I don't
me.
know if you're okay with the interruption.
I am
but-
fine with
Because I
with
think it's so,
interruptions, yes.
I
don't,
think,
yeah,
you know, this is the first time we've done this in years, and I'm like blown away by some of the stuff you're saying, and I know this stuff, I think. I just realized how much I didn't know listening to you.
Ooh, so excited. Yes, I
So-
don't consider them interruptions. I'm much more interested in us having a meaningful exchange. If we get to less or slides, cool, go ahead.
Well, one of the things you said that stuck out to me a lot was that, well, one, loneliness is not something you can see. It's, you can have a lonely person and not be able to identify. But you mentioned that some people are lonely even within. And I don't remember where I saw this picture, like you see all these little white little circles, and then there's a red circle in the middle that kind of stands out. So I was curious. It's crazy that one can feel lonely even with being surrounded by people. You touched on something like that.
Right, yes. And I'm glad you're mentioning
So,
that.
so it doesn't, well, my thought was, well, then people are not the problem. It's not that you're not surrounded by people. So you can feel lonely even sitting in this room here full of people.
Absolutely,
And that's
absolutely.
weird. My brain can't.
Well, I'll say a little bit about that. Maybe I can have
Because, you know, look, because in my mind, loneliness is, well, you don't have any people around you.
okay, which
And
is
then you
what,
put people around
right,
you,
right.
and you.
Which is why I wanted to talk, isolation is when you're actually physically alone, you know? It's the physical state of being alone. You might be fine with it, or you might not. So we're not talking about isolation. So has anybody but me, I've had this experience, you know, some of this is about, are you more an introvert? Are you more an extrovert? Are you somewhere in the middle? I believe it or not, I'm an introvert, kind of in the middle, but I'm an introvert. Is anybody like me, where you're in a setting, it could be so let's just pick a social setting, it could be a social setting, it could even be people that you like, where after a while you're just inside your head saying, I've had enough, you know? Anybody like me? I've had enough, you know? Yeah, I've had enough contact, and even though there's nothing bad happening, and it could be wonderful. So I'm outing myself, I'm going public, you know. But I want to, inside I'm saying, I've had enough, you know, I want to go home, you know, I want to go home. And sometimes that's the introvert in me. I don't know if you know this interesting fact about introverts. We used to think that introverts were just shy, and this is the work of Dr. Susan Cain. She is the advocate. But introverts aren't just shy, and this is another brain fact that I love. It turns out that introverts get overstimulated out in the world. Isn't that interesting? They get overstimulated, too much stimulation. And so the reason they got to go home, you know, is their nervous system needs to quiet down. Isn't that interesting? Overstimulated, you know? And one of the ways you know if here's a little quick and easy, you know you're an introvert, to tell an introvert from an extrovert. If you're an introvert, you know, when you're tired or when you're, you know, you're not very charged, introverts typically will go home, they can stay in their house forever, they have a million projects, they read, they listen to music. Introverts have to go away, you know, from people and be quiet. Extroverts, on the other hand, they love to be around people, and when their batteries are low, they go towards people. This is just an interesting thing. So some of that, you know, loneliness is just kind of tuning in, and so you know, you can be feeling both. Have you had any experiences where you're in the middle of a group or a crowd and you felt lonely? Can you think of anything?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you know what this is? Let me go back to the infinity sign. Togetherness, connection, isolation, solitude, loneliness are all connected. Don't think of them as separate states. Think of them as on a continuum. And that's a really nice example and question that you brought up they don't exist apart from each other. You know, they're fluid kind of states. Does that make some sense?
Yeah.
Okay, was there another question? Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned at the beginning that food is a low-level addiction. What do you mean by low level?
Well, it could be a high level, you know. I just said.
Because I'm like,
Yeah,
seriously?
right.
I think it's a high level, very high level.
Right. Well, my addiction to food is at a low level right now, but yes,
Okay.
you're absolutely right. I
Because you
didn't
made a
mean-
general statement.
Right.
so-
Well, I think what I was trying to say is I was normalizing. There's a lot of people that gained weight during COVID, and not typically people that, you know, are dieting. Like I'm always dieting, up, down, up, down. But you know, it's kind of one of the things. It's one of the things people have been willing to admit openly and kind of chuckle about. So that was more the context I was saying it. You know, and I was absolutely tying it into loneliness for me. I can't say what it is for other people.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Yes.
Last part of the last phrase there.
Are we on solitude or isolation?
Yeah, so
I didn't do solitude yet, but yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
no,
that's fine.
No, go
All
ahead.
right, let me say it and see if you have the question. So solitude,
Oh, Gigi's calling.
Gigi's calling me?
No.
Okay, all right. Solitude. Solitude is the peaceful one. It's the one where I choose it, you know. Nobody sent me to the corner. And it's voluntary isolation. And we think of solitude as a time, you know, when we're working deeply, you know, sometimes when we're going through a loss, or sometimes when we're metabolizing something deep. It's typically a time of self-reflection and usually a pretty good growth period, or the solitude may be about, monks do solitude. There's a lot of times solitude is part of our recovery program. If you go somewhere on a workshop, sometimes they'll say, take a walk alone, you know? And so this is the kind of restorative aspect of this. And one of the things about solitude is, I guess it's kind of saying, if you can be with yourself and be peaceful, you know, if you can be with yourself and be peaceful, that's, I know, something that isn't an easy accomplishment, and it certainly wasn't for me, and for a lot of people to stop the chatter in our minds. So sometimes solitude is an aspiration. Sometimes meditation is a way of learning to do the solitude. And what I liked about this, that sentence about if we can be in solitude and be at peace with ourselves, it allows us to have better connections with each other. And it is actually a protection against loneliness, because you all know this, what's the first step in so much of our recovery is, whether you call it self-care, I like to call it befriending myself, being my own best friend, having my own back. So, what's your question? Are you still there?
Pretty much addressed it, but it really
Ask
caught
it.
my attention, you know, that solitude protects us from loneliness. That concept is really something to digest.
Yeah, what do you think about it? Do you see the connection?
Yeah, I see it. It's something I know I need to work on.
Right,
So
right, yeah. And it's something that doesn't come easy. Yeah. So it's kind of that idea, if I can be with myself and all my thoughts. And I think prayer and meditation is a wonderful bridge to that, to help. Yeah. I'm glad you're pondering about that. It's a good thing to ponder. Yes.
I just wanted to say that people would think I'm an extrovert because I'm very social, but I love solitude. I love my time with me.
Right.
And one of the things that I learned in COVID was to slow down and to connect with me more. And now I feel like I really want to protect my time just with me. Even if I went on a walk, I wanted to be on a walk with me. Like,
I'm so glad that, Gigi, that you mentioned that, because one of the things I hear people talking about is, I've been doing, you know, workshops to help people get in touch. A lot of people have said that, about they have had the time to have solitude. They have had the time to do whatever, peaceful walks, writing, creativity, or just being quiet. And a lot of times I hear the question, I ask myself, what was I so busy with? I was so busy. I was so busy. I was like a little gerbil, you know, gerbil. Yeah, we were so busy, yeah.
So solitude is where you learn to be with yourself.
Absolutely,
But
yes.
if
yes.
you don't If you have a problem where you're living outside yourself, where you don't really like yourself, then that's, we're talking about a whole different dimension, or?
Yes, and yes, you know, it's a continuum, and yeah, that's, I think part of the recovery is going from outside, dealing with that self-hate, or whatever is in there, the demons within. Yeah, it certainly is a destination to get to, and not so easy.
So eventually you're saying, because I didn't catch that solitude protects you from loneliness part. I
Well,
didn't catch that. Is that what he said?
It says it there.
It's right there.
Carlos said it.
So let's see if I can give an example, maybe some other people can help me. From inside me, the protection is I like being with myself now. I can spend hours with myself.
So
when
you're
I
not
am.
lonely anymore?
No, I don't say that. There are sometimes I'm lonely. But I think that this time period has given me a gift of being much more comfortable with my solitude. Much more comfortable. It's not an either or. Everything's in little bites. We gain these things by little bites. It's work. It's work. It's constantly work. Yeah, because you know, if you have a time of turmoil or a time of trauma, I'm not very good in solitude. I'm churning again. So it's a process, not an absolute. You know?
Can I say a little one?
Yeah.
Thing? Something I discovered about myself this year also was that when I'm not able to be myself around others, I feel lonely. And I think it's because I miss myself.
You're not connecting with you. Yeah.
And if I'm not connecting with me, I cannot connect with someone else. So it's almost like what came first, the chicken or the egg. So
Exactly.
if I'm around someone that is shutting me down, or I
Right.
allow them to shut me down, I can't be myself. My true self hides, and then I feel I'm abandoned by myself.
Gotcha. So you're not coming from within, connected. One more from over there.
Wait, Nancy,
There's
I have a question on Zoom from Raquel. She says, just a thought, I've always judged myself for my loneliness because I feel it means I'm not giving enough to myself. How does this connect to being an extrovert, where it feels like my tendencies are to seek external validation and to be an external processor?
I think I'm gonna have to repeat the question.
Okay, yeah, I want to say this, I didn't say it before, you know, I'm not doing therapy, and I don't want to minimize something that's very complex. Is it Raquel?
Yeah.
It's a very complex question. I guess read it again to me, slower.
Yeah. So the question is, how does this connect to being, so basically she says she's always judged herself for her loneliness because it makes her feel like she's not giving enough. She says, how does this connect to being an extrovert, where it feels like her tendencies are to seek validation?
Okay, I'm just going to break it apart. This is not therapy. This is just, I'm going to respond as best I can to Raquel. So I've always judged myself for being lonely. So what obviously we all hear there is there's some expectation and a judgment, you're not doing enough. And sometimes when we're extroverts, there's a saying that extroverts belong to the world, you know, rather than themselves sometimes. Because extroverts like they want a wide group of friends. This is in general, so don't anybody take this personally. It's just a delineation. So extroverts they like to go broad. They like to have a large group of friends. That's how they thrive. So they go real horizontal. So introverts sometimes two or three people is enough. So it sounds like there's a little bit of an imbalance between too much out there with extroverts and not enough for self. That's mostly what I'm hearing, you know. And I guess the biggest piece I would also say is one of my favorite things I learned from Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar. He had a lot of sayings, words, you know, we had quotes and inspirations and things from the Bible. And one of them that was so healing to me, and I still say it all the time, it's permission to be human, permission to be human, permission to be human, permission to be human. And right here, right now, I'm fine. So I also would hear for Raquel and for all of us is, you know, when we're judging ourselves for how we are, to try to access that other voice. And and kind of just be with it. So that's the best I can do without getting real specific. I don't know how that works for you, Raquel. You can let us know. Somebody else?
Yeah, ma'am.
We had one here.
Do that one
Do
first.
that one. And then we'll do these last two.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
thank
that's
you.
it.
It was in regards to with the loneliness, being surrounded by other people but still feeling lonely. One thing I constantly think about is, back in the 90s, of course, before smartphones, is just remembering as a kid being around, family or friends, and just kind of being forced to have conversation in a good way, of course. But I notice now, just gradually, as being around family and friends, we're together, but everyone's on their phone. And I have almost, experimented where I could just, put the phone away and I'm there. We're all there, but everybody's on their phone.
So that's a great point. And that could be a whole other day we spend together, but I just want to say, Dr. Murphy talks about, technology can certainly be a great connector, but it's also a tremendous distancer. And I'll just share a little nubby of a very interesting, and I have to admit that sometimes my kids call me the cell phone Nazi. Because if there's phones on the table, I say, okay, phones off the table, put them away. So here's the interesting piece of research that was done. I don't remember where it was. Probably one of my colleagues that's out there in Zoom land is going to text and tell me. But here was the research. Even having your phone laying on the table, just laying there, not using it, cuts down the communication between 20 and 30%, even if you're not on it, because there's a certain distraction factor that it's there. So, yeah, and then one of the things that I've noticed in the last however many years, and I remember I'm a marriage and family therapist as well as other things, and I have a small waiting room. And people, I can't tell you how many couples come through the door. Now they're coming through the door for therapy, and one's on their phone and the other one's on their phone, and that's where, it's revealing, right? It's revealing, yes, that's a good point. One more, and then I want to ask, because before we break, we're going to actually take a loneliness scale together and just give ourselves a little rating. One more.
So, the first time I ever got presented with even the idea of solitude, and I didn't, until you talked about this, I didn't make the full connection of what was really happening, but was a friend of mine was telling me that they like to drive, and they take the long roads or the country roads, and they like to do this all the time. Is this guy right here? And I remember I said to him, I was like, well, I usually I put on music, whatever. He's like, no, sometimes I just want to think. And so I was like, when he said that, I was just like, what do you mean? And he kind of told me and basically described what I'm seeing there, the self-reflection and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
so I decided I was going to give that a shot. And I combined it with, I was already doing meditation, but I hadn't made the connection that meditation could help me with this. But what I was saying is, before I was considered an extrovert because I was all the time with trying to be around people and like you were saying. But as time went on and I started to be more, I didn't realize that that's what was happening. I was being more comfortable with myself. I started noticing that the amount of how much I needed to fill myself with being around other people and being like that kind of, it started to minimize, but not in a bad way where I just wanted to be alone, but more in the sense of I'm feeling a little more fulfilled, and I'm actually starting to get to know myself instead of trying to find my identity with all these people that are all around me.
thank you so much. You set the table, and that's the narrative that you start hearing, the reality. Thank you. What's the next slide? Okay, there are many reasons for loneliness. There's many more than on this. This slide applies not just during COVID, but anytime. When we lose relationships, when somebody passes away, when we break up with somebody, when our last kid goes off to college, empty nest, that's loss of some identity. Lack of social networks, you feel cut off. There's many people, loss of status, identity, job, or career. There's a lot of people dealing with that particular kind of loss and the loneliness that comes with that. I think when you stay with us this afternoon and you get to draw your circles of connection, I think you're going to be it would be real easy for you to see, how your world has changed. And obviously discrimination, stigma, bullying, all of these things, and many other reasons for loneliness. Can anyone think of a reason for loneliness that they really want to shout out that's not there? Trauma, absolutely. And you know what? COVID. We've been hearing that. My granddaughter at 6, she looked at me about 5 months ago and she said, Grammy, when am I going to stop hearing COVID? Because I'm so sick of it. I'm sure we all are. But there is a certain, and again, I think for the most part, everybody's been tremendous soldiers in getting through this, and we have gotten through this. But I think there is a loneliness for life as we knew it. And it comes up, mostly I hear people talk about touch. I miss being able to touch whatever. I miss being able to hold hands. And I know still when I go up to people, even today, I want to come up and I want to hug you, but there's that hesitancy. And you have the mask on. So it's interesting because it put very profoundly, never before in my lifetime, in your lifetime, has the reality of if I touch you or I'm in your space, I could get sick or die. That's profound.
It is.
That's profound. And as we are moving back into transitions, and I know so many times, and this is a loneliness too. Like a few days ago, every time somebody in your group, your pod, gets COVID, like maybe it's the people that you're walking with, you have to refigure and reconfigure your life. You have, so it's always up in flux about who can I be near, who can I not, who am I going to contaminate, and that makes life not just complicated but lonely. So I think there's a certain kind of loneliness embedded in this whole experience. Go ahead, Ed.
Sorry, I gotta get this out. I gotta say this because I'm here.
Why
He messed
Do
up.
it.
The Hope4Life members are armed.
Armed with good stuff.
We're armed with questions. I just saw this. I suffered every single one of the things here with my parents' divorce. Every single one of them. I lost my dad. The social networks that were around that. The status of now, instead of being a child of a married couple, so status, identity. And then back in the 70s, within the groups that we hung out with, the certain stigma, oh, his parents got divorced. So I just saw that and I thought I wanted to say it. Sorry and thank you.
What is your name?
Louis.
I did not pay Louis to be here, but I think I'm taking him with me. I think I'm taking him with me. Other workshops. They're such helpful questions. Yeah, these are looking like they're separate things. Yeah. And this is what we call multiple layers of trauma. And there's little T's and there's big T's. And I always say to my people, you get to decide, is it a capital T or a little t? So we have, and sometimes now we're calling them ACEs, adverse childhood experiences is kind of some of the new jargon. And of course, these things layer in, and that is why it is so hard. That's why it's long-term work. That's why it's soul work. Sometimes I call trauma work, you descend into hell with Persephone and God, and you have to be able to go to that place, which is why we're talking about loneliness, because that's that kind of soul work too. Yeah, so not an easy thing. Next. Is that the last? Go ahead, Emmanuel. Okay, this was the other point I was making. You've got to be detectives. You've got to look for the loneliness. It masquerades. It can look like anger. It can look like sadness. It can look like alienation. It can look like so many other states. So you really have to learn to have the guts to say, are you lonely? What are you lonely for?
Tell me about the anger. How does it look like anger?
Well, people can be very irritated and angry, and that's the surface. That's what they're showing you. But underneath, they're really angry and lonely. It can look like any emotion. You have to be willing to have soft eyes, spend some time with somebody, and say, "Hey, you seem really. I know you're angry. Da 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 da. Are you lonely? Are there some areas of your life you're lonely in?" You have to be willing to, with heart and kindness, ask the questions and be willing to sit with people and do that work.
But what if loneliness is not the root? What if something else is the root of the problem?
Well, there are many, I don't ever think there's one root. We happen to be looking at this layer of loneliness today because it's often missed. But I think everything that happens is, we are very complex. So loneliness is not the whole thing. But what I like about the loneliness lens is it's not psychobabble language. It's real street talk. People can relate to it. So I think, today, I think that Dr. Murthy's work helps us elevate and give us, a simple human question to think about asking. So I don't think it's the only route at all. Go ahead, Emmanuel. Okay, so we're going to take, would somebody help pass out the loneliness scale? But I want to, while you're doing that.
Do they need pencils for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Here's that. So I didn't want you to think Dr. Murphy was the only one that ever addressed Mary Oliver. Who knows Mary Oliver's poems? Okay, well, I love Mary Oliver. She passed away a couple years ago. So this is, Mary Oliver loved nature, and this is her poem. I too have known loneliness. I too have known what it is to feel misunderstood, rejected, and suddenly not at all beautiful. Oh, Mother Earth, your comfort is great. Your arms never withhold. It has saved my life to know this. Your rivers flowing, your roses opening in the morning. Oh, motions of tenderness. You can see Mary Oliver very often writes about nature, and nature's kind of her guide where she turns. So I've just passed out one page. There are a lot of loneliness scales, believe it or not, online. I picked this one because it was relatively simple and short for us to do. And this particular one, I did not write it. This came from ARP. They wrote it. And so I just thought it might be a nice something for you to do, just to kind of see where you rate. You don't have to share it, it's just for you. And I think then after, we're going to be taking a break. So why don't you just kind of do this and score it for yourself? Is that right? We're going to take a break after this?
Yes.
Okay. And I do hope that everybody is staying with us here. I think also that for our Zoom people, I think Emmanuel has put up the loneliness scale. So I want to say something right now. I hope everybody's staying with us this afternoon, not just because I want that, but I also want to say I don't want to leave you. We're taking a break now. I don't want to leave you in the world of the loneliness scale. So the timing of things doesn't always work as organically. So, and I'm saying this for a reason. I would never leave anybody there lonely and open. So please, please come back this afternoon so that you can get the understanding and the connection and the love and the togetherness that is what we do with loneliness. So please come back this afternoon. We'll take a little break, but please come back for part 2 because I wouldn't want to leave you just with the loneliness scale. Okay?
Oh, the next Saturday is...
No, part 2 this afternoon.
After the break, we are going to tell you how to become unlonely.
Unlonely, right. You got to stay.
Anybody wants to just stay lonely or everybody wants to be unlonely?
You got it.
All right. The ones who want to be unlonely, come back after the break. Don't disappear.
Right.
Unlonely in solitude.
Unlonely in solitude. Pencil? Pen?
Maybe you'll have to talk to me more.
Okay.
You're asking about the neuroscience.
Right, like the neural pathways. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. 1 second.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yes. hungry. If there's a word that you don't understand, please feel free to ask me. Sometimes there's some language differences. So that's cool. I want everybody. So if there's something you don't, ask me.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Is this in general? This is not COVID.
Well, answer it. It's always best to answer it present. Just how you feel right now in the moment. That's always easier.
Right.
But interestingly enough, you're asking a good question, Simone, because I have done some of these things. And then if you wanted, just for interesting, I got plenty of paper. You could answer it pre-COVID. It's a very interesting pre and post, which is actually what we're going to do this afternoon, in looking at how our connections have changed. So if you want another sheet, you could do it from that mindset. That was a good question. Simone asked about, is this now or pre-COVID? And that would be kind of a different test. If anybody wants an extra sheet, we have it. It would be interesting for you to look at pre and post. I actually would have done that had we had more time. But this is for now, kind of right here, right now.
Wow, isn't this amazing?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much. I think this is so needed, to be able to connect, to be able, when somebody, and this is what we do at Hope4Life. I mean, she's describing the work we do here, I mean, this is what we do here. I mean, she's shredding for us and feed spooning us the differences of words. Words are so important. We listen to like loneliness, isolation, and we throw all these words around so loosely, and coming to realize and connect them with our lives is just amazing. So I think this is just marvelous. But this is a time, and we have Connie here, so let's welcome Connie.
Hi, everybody. This is completely extemporaneous. I haven't really planned this, but this lesson today is really relevant to me because, well, actually, who has received insight today so far? Because okay. I think we all have, and yeah, I think we all have. So there's more to come. So I grew up very, very alone. In my dysfunctional family of origin, I had my brothers who pretty much just emotionally abused me all the time, and no one ever stopped them. And I was constantly told I was a moron, an imbecile, stupid, fatso, never amount to anything. And no one ever stopped them. And so I began to believe all these lies. And that was the worst part about it, that no one ever stopped them. I know that siblings do this kind of thing, but no one ever intervened. So it just went on and on and on. And then apart from that, I was pretty much kept alone. I wasn't really in activities with other kids that much, I mean, a little bit. But, so I was kept alone. I had feelings of loneliness from a very early age. And not only that, I had all this vulnerability because of believing all these lies about myself. It was very, very hard to reach out, to make friends, to take a step on my own to go participate, because I already was believing all these lies. So I finally just decided I had to, you know, as I got older, my job was twofold. I had to survive and I had to get out of that place and just survive. And I did accomplish those things. But life has to be more than that. So when I've come to Hope4Life, I've really found a place where finally I can open up and nobody's going to judge me. And I can finally, you know, the 7 Desires book, if you haven't read that, you need to read that book. It's an incredible book. But one of our biggest desires is just simply to be heard and understood. And I found that here. And as Nancy has told us, being able to share our story is just very, very healing. And it helps others to share their story. So anyway, we've received tremendous insight already today, as we always do. Every class I come to, I receive insight. I'm blessed. Last week was amazing. So, but we know if we want this to continue, we need to step up to the plate as we can and share our resources with people who are sharing so intimately and vulnerably with us. So, my little appeal.
Actually, Patty came a little earlier and she said, can I step up for the offering? Can I do this? I really can connect with this. And like she said, you know, we're a non-for-profit organization. We get no support. For those that are new here with us, welcome again. We get no support from anyone other than the community here. There were people, this June 13 is going to be 6 years since we started this ministry.
Wow.
And we started it with one person. And I remember actually the one that launched us into this was our son Emmanuel. He's here today. He was 21 years old, and like he had always been an entrepreneur, a businessman, blah, 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 blah. And financially, after having so much financially, we hit a wall. We were involved in a lawsuit, and long story short, financially we lost everything, which at one point it felt like we had lost everything in our lives, until I began to realize, no, we lost finances, but we still have each other, we have our family. So this is the only thing Lucky knew what to do, business, entrepreneurship. So he was trying to find jobs and do this. And one day Emmanuel said to me, as a 21-year-old, and he was like, Mom, I understand that this is what my dad has done all his life. And he has been very good at it. He's provided very well. But he says, has it occurred to you guys that maybe life is calling my dad to something else? He says, every time I see my dad, and a friend of ours had given him a job at that time, and he says, every time I see my dad leave the house, and I see him come back from this job, I see a dead man leave the house, and I see a dead man coming back. He says, maybe, and I said, well, what are we gonna do? And we, in our marriage, we've been married for 32 years. We have a 34-year-old, a 33-year-old, a 27-year-old, and a 15-year-old. And in our journey for seeking healing, a terrible marriage, a lot of issues, a lot of problems, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of lonely moments, a lot of, a mess. We were a mess. Our lives was a mess. We had a lot of finances, but our lives were a mess. And in that quest to find healing, to find wholeness, to find happiness, to find, there has to be more, there has to be more. So set on a quest, and every conference we could find, every healing ministry we will hear about, we will pack our kids, he can tell you, and we would go wherever it was, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tampa, Tennessee, I mean, you name it. We would pack our kids and go look for healing everywhere we went. So a lot of it has come, like Nancy said, it's funny, not so much the titles or the certificates we have, but it's experiential, everything we've experienced in our home. So he says, Mom, when I hear my dad talking about the things you guys talk about to everyone, like how to get well and all this, I see him become alive. So mind you, we have zero, we've lost everything, no money. So how do you start something like this? You need money, no? That's in the back of your head. You start anything you want to launch in life, you need finances, you need means. And I remember I told him and I said to him, it's easier said than done. You know, like we have nowhere to talk. No church is inviting us to talk. Who are we? We're like nobodies. And he looked at me and he says, Mom, those are excuses. I said, you know, we have to pay the cars. We still have bills to pay. And he says, Mom, those are excuses. Do you have a Saturday? That doesn't work on Saturdays. He says, well, you can take a Saturday, send an email to all your friends and tell them this is what you're going to do. And you can start like that. But I said, where are we going to do this? We don't have a place to do this. And you know what? At that moment, I realized, okay. And I said, but to whom? Who are we going to? He says, Mom, one cat. And one cat will become two cats. Two cats will become three cats. Three cats will become four. And he said, and if you need a cat for your first class, I'll sit there. I'll be there with you guys. And I will be your first cat. And from that talk, and I remember I called Lucky and I said, this is what Emmanuel was saying, because it resonated in my heart. I realized I was seeing that dead man come in and go out, but I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to meet it. Because somebody needed to provide, you know? Because bills needed to get paid. So I wasn't acknowledging it. So I remember I talked to Lucky, and we three held hands. Do you remember? Yeah. And I said, okay, God, you want to call it universe, you want to call it, I don't know what. I just said, God, I don't know what we're to do. But I just knew we were dying. I was seeing him dying. And I said, to whom? I have no idea. Where? I have no idea. But today we say yes. I thought there was a lightning going to come in to confirm this story, and the ground was going to shake. Nothing like that happened. It was as dead as when I started saying, okay, yes. And from that day, which I still have it so present in my life, to today, I'm always blown away. To be able to have people like Nancy in a room, and to be able to have a platform that we can do this, that there's no limitations, and that we can transcend race, beliefs, ethnicity, cultures. I mean, it is just incredible, you know? So with that said, it's people that came. So someone lent us a room free. They said, we're not going to charge you for this room, but you just have to raise your own money. So we started in a room that big with few cats. We didn't even know what we were doing. I came out of the kitchen of my house, raising children, to talk to people. And I can tell you, the first times, I know I have fluids in my body, and I just remember thinking some fluids are going to come out from some hole in my body, and I don't know from where. Because because I didn't know if I wanted to pee, I didn't know if I wanted to poop, I didn't know if I wanted to throw up or cry. So fluids wanted to come out from somewhere. But here we are. So it just hasn't been that simple. And I think this is wonderful. And I want to thank you guys because of you, we can do this. Because of you, we can have wonderful people like Nancy come and teach us collectively. There's people that can afford it, people that cannot afford it. And that's what I love about Hope4Life, that there's no limitations. And as long as we can, and as long as these doors can remain open, we're going to continue to do this. So thank you. And with that said, is your support, is your resources that keep this going. We do our part, and we want to thank you for doing your part in helping us maintain this. So these are the different ways that you guys can give, sustain, and continue to maintain this ministry. And one of them is text giving. You text an amount to that number, write the word hope, and it's right there. And you can do it if you're present here online and on Zoom and you want to have trouble with it, ask, and somebody will guide you how to do it.
We all come here with a lot of pain. We all know it. We all have our pain dripping down everywhere. And they take it. And they take it. And they take it. And they listen to us. And they love us. And it's not easy. For them, it's easy. I mean, they make it look easy. Most days. But I get to hang out with them sometimes, and I get to see sometimes a little bit of their schedule. And none of this would be possible if they were not willing to just stay a little longer with us, listen to us one more time. And they're relentless at loving us in the midst of our poop. So I just wanted to acknowledge both of you, really. So thank you, Lucky and Giovanna. And as you were mentioning the cats, because one cat became 2 cats and 3 cats, it's funny because I got this cat mask for Nancy so that we could tell her, welcome to the cat pack. I don't know if that's a thing. But thank you for being one of our cats. So let's continue learning from Nancy today. We might roll a little bit over, and it's gonna be good, right? Doesn't matter. Thank you. It's all yours.
Thank you. I want to put it on, but here, I'll put it on. If you're a member of the club, meow. I'm going to move along. I forgot to show you this slide, and I love it. Not just because it's by my mentor, but it's kind of the theme of how to have a good enough happy life to me. And Tal is very good. Things do not necessarily happen for the best, but some people are able to make the best of things that happen. And we can learn to be that person. And what it's called is being a benefit finder, or sometimes we call finding the greater good in things. And it's a very, very important part of the science of happiness. And happiness and whole being is a science now. It's evidence-based. It can be taught. I used to think that you're either born, kind of born happy, or maybe you got the good disposition or the genes. But we now know that you've got to work, even at whole being and happiness. It doesn't just happen. So I just like that quote. Just wanted to share that with you. The loneliness skills that you did, I'm not going to particularly open that up right now. You have them, because I want to move along and teach you something else. And when we're going to have some group sharing and some Q&A, if you feel like sharing it. I did it more for you to have it as kind of a little base level. And it's kind of just fun for yourself to kind of take things along the way. If you feel like taking it a little later, we have extra copies. It's online. But that's kind of your private little thing. Okay, Emmanuel, let's move to, I think it's 13, choosing connection. Speaking about consciousness, this is about making what we're talking about intentional, making it proactive. And it's about choosing connection. And every day we have a choice when we plan our day. The big question is, how do I want to show up in life today? How do I want to show up? And who do I want to show up with? So every day we are making choices to meet people with kindness, to meet people by looking them in the eye with soft eyes, and to recognize also, and you all know about this, the power of service, because service connects us with appreciation and gratitude. And you know, one of the best ways when you're feeling down or when you're feeling down or lonely is to go give service and get outside of yourself, or to we had Dr. Emmons on here a few months ago to practice gratitude. I call it gratitude. My gratitude practice is my best antidepressant. When I can really love and be in gratitude, not just say it, and sometimes that's the button I'll push really strong, and I'll take the entire day, evening, how many days, to really look and see all the things, all the people, all the situations I can be grateful for. Okay, next, let's see. Okay, here's the meat of this, and I'm going to pass this. Well, can somebody pass this out so people can have a copy and scribble on it? So, in Dr. Murthy's book, ooh, you made it in color. Cool. Okay. Mine is plain white. I'm jealous. Okay, so this is nothing fancy. This is 3 circles, and I'm going to give it to you. We're going to pass it out to you also plain, because this is what we're going to be working with. And I think this will make a little more sense from some of the great questions. Now, Dr. Murthy didn't have this in his book. He just talked about it. But one of the things that I love to do is, I'm a psychodramatist, so I like to put things into action and make them visual. And when COVID's over, when I come back to be with you all, if we can move around, we probably would put this into action and do it on the floor and actually look at somebody's circles of connection. So I'm just going to talk you through this a little. So the inner circle, the very inner circle, those are your intimates. Those are the people you spend the most time with, romantic bonds, your closest friends. These are the strongest bonds. These are the people you share your secrets with. Now, I always look at statistics with real people and I go, it's just a suggestion, So, but in Dr. Murthy's work and his research, what we ought to be doing to kind of feel a good sense of balance is to spend 60% of our time with that intimate circle. Just take these numbers loosely, and then, and you can see there's kind of a nice balance, and then balance of 40% with the outer 2. So your intimate circle right now, and I'm going to show you in a minute, kind of with mine, I drew mine, and pencils. People are getting pencils, right? Pencils and something to write on. So a lot of times with COVID going on, our intimate circle, people, I don't know, call it their pod and different things. These have been the people you've seen. For me, it's my daughter, my granddaughter, my dog, my neighbor up the street. So that intimate circle is perhaps very different for you now. And we're going to be doing this when we draw it from right here, right now, what our life looks like. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. This is just kind of a very simple, we call it a social atom. It's a visual of your circles of connection and who's in them. So the middle is intimate, close friends and confidants. The inner. The middle circle is your occasional companions. These are people, you see occasionally. You don't see them all the time. Maybe you see them once a week. You see them at church, or maybe you see them every few weeks when you play tennis. You don't see them all the time. And there's a certain level of social intimacy. These are typically not the people you share your deepest and darkest secrets with. So that middle circle is occasional companions, and we'll keep this up. And it's more the relational side, more than the other relationships in your life. Now the outer circle is a very interesting circle. The outer circle is community, and it's usually communities and colleagues. Certainly Hope4Life is out there, and also Temple Beth Or. These are things you do as a collective. It might be the men's poker game you had, or the tennis team, or things like that. So that's the collective part of your life. So here's what we're gonna do. Anybody want to ask me about the 3 circles? Now you get to decide. It's very subjective. You get to decide if somebody's in your middle, your inner, middle, or outer. So you don't need to ask me, is that right? Because you know. You know. There's no wrong here. Let me see. Okay. So these are your circles of connection as they are in your life now. And the goal of this is to make it very in your face. You can see visually the nature and pattern of your connections that are going on in your life right now. And then we'll focus after we've done it and talk some about what shifts or changes you notice. So you're going to put yourself in the very middle of that intimate circle, if you would. Put yourself in the very middle, and you put your initials. So here, I'm going to show you this. There's my scribbly one. Let me see. Can you put my scribbly one on? Okay. So you see, this is not fancy, you know. So put yourself in the center. You'll see that I put myself in the center. Let's go. Can we go back to the other one? Okay. So on this circles of connection, you're going to put people. You're going to put pets. You're going to put anything in your life that you used to connect with, you know, things you did, whether it's go to the beauty parlor, play tennis, spontaneous shopping trips that we used to be able to do, grocery store. So we're going to put people, places, things, pets. We could put nature, if that was part of all the different ways that we connected with people, places, things, and even things I haven't thought of. Oh, also I should say, on these circles of connection, you know, sometimes somebody that is already passed over, like I think a lot about my grandma Fanny. So she's in my kind of inner circle. So it could be somebody that's already passed on, that's very much a part of your inner life. So it could be a person that's living or dead, but somebody that you hold internally. So you can see there's no big rules about how this goes. Other thing you can do, if you wish. Oh, also an important one. You can put on here food, chemical dependencies, you know, alcohol. Again, you know, nobody has to look at yours. You know, anything that's in there it's something that you're connected with. This is a circle of connection with all things in your life. And the other thing I want to say is the circle that you do today, even if you went and did this tomorrow, these circles are fluid. Think of them as always moving, because our connections to things are always changing. And that's called the science of sociometry, and it's how we make social choices. And we're changing all the time. So this is fluid. We're just taking a photograph of what it looks like today. Yes?
Can we also put behaviors like lying or
yes,
judgment,
great idea. Yes.
Criticism or
yes.
cynicism?
Very good. Yes.
Or depression or sadness, things
right.
like that.
Yes, very good idea.
Because people get stuck on the big 3.
Right.
And they forget anger and all this power.
Yeah, any emotional state. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, the one that comes up for me a lot, particularly after a lot of Zoom, is irritability. You know, not irritability in my eyes, but I can be irritated. So yes, anger, irritation, criticism, contempt, any emotional state. You can put anything. There's no wrongs, because this is a picture of what you're connecting with. So I'm going to go back just for a little bit, just so you can see. Let's go back to mine. And I've done this about, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, and we won't have the time here, but what was really interesting is I did this for one before COVID, but again, which if we had more time I would do. So I just was going to talk a little bit about this so you can just see and give you an idea. So I'm in the center there, that's NK, and then you see right beneath me Jasper, that's my service dog, who's almost always with me, except he's being babysat today. And then you'll see some names of friends around there, you know. These are the people that I have seen during Zoom. Then you also see in mine, you see Zoom circles, Zoom circles, Zoom circles. a lot of Zoom circles. So these are Zoom friends that I connect with. It's not, these aren't groups or, these are my Zoom girlfriends. My daughter, son, and twins that live in town. And then if you move, so that's my like inner circle. So the middle circle, which is the relational circle, I have Zoom with my clients, because I'm on Zoom with my clients. I'm not face to face yet. And then you also see a lot of Zoom here, which made me understand a lot of things. And on that left side, it's all the communities that I'm Zooming with. Whole Being Institute, the JCC in Manhattan, my improv group. So you can begin to see how much of my connection is through Zoom. The outer ring is very interesting because I have all those activities I used to do in the community, spontaneous trips, beauty parlor, restaurants, grocery, nails, all my colleagues and people I used to see at the office, and you will notice as I have minus by all of them, because none of them are happening. So I just wanted you to see how casually this can be. You can take it off, because you can put back the other one, the one that has all the, great. So don't make it a diagram. Again, it's a picture of you. Does anybody have any questions about how to do it? Do you have pencils?
Yes.
Yes, pencils are good because you'll see. Okay, in the back, yes.
Yeah. So the only thing that's separating.
Can you speak up, please?
The only thing that is separating the 60%. The only thing that is separating the inner circle with the outer circles is the time allocated to those activities and people and places.
Oh, don't pay too much attention to that. It's really more, don't pay attention to the percentages because it's different with everyone. I'll give you an example, just to give you some context because I know what you're questioning. So one of the things that's interesting with me, I'll use myself as an example. You know, I'm on Zoom twice as many hours, even as I was in the office. So what do you think's happened? So it's taken away from the percent of time I'm spending in intimacy in that middle circle. So these are all just, they're fluid numbers. They don't have to be your numbers. I'll give you another example because I don't know where the young lady that mentioned the cell phone. You know, one of the things that can happen. Yeah. Okay. Kayla, you know, sometimes what can happen with technology is you can get so involved with the Facebook and the technology and interesting things, the media and stuff. And Dr. Murthy said this actually happened to him, is if you're connecting with a lot of people, but you took a lot of time away from that intimate or relational circle. And how intimate is it really? Because you can end up spending a lot of time. Did that answer you enough?
Yeah, actually it does.
Okay, so don't pay too much attention because you're going to actually kind of figure out your percentages yourself. That's part of what we're going to look at that's fun. Any other questions before we go? And people at home, you can just do this on a piece of paper. Okay. One of my favorite clients over the years, she used to come to therapy with paper plates. If you have a paper plate, the kind you can write on, this works real good. But anyhow, anything you have, you can do it along with us. Okay. Anybody need pencil paper? So we're going to give you, about 4 or 5 minutes to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll all tell me with your faces if it's not enough, right? You will.
This will definitely fluctuate over time.
Yeah. Absolutely, yes, yeah. And it should, because otherwise you'd go pretty rigid life. Yeah. These circles are always moving. You're adding people, people are moving away, yeah.
You are my glory, you are the lifter of my head.
And not have music, that's okay, because I find if you want to play for the Zoom people, I'd like people to have some quiet to go inside. Thank you. one thing that I forgot to say, which someone just helped me, you know, people that are like kind of distant in your life, you know, they're still part of you, but maybe right now you're not speaking much. You can also use closeness and proximity. So put them far away from you, which would be the third cycle, you know, the third thing. So you can use closeness and far away as an indication of, you know, where you feel on that relationship. You could put them on the outside of the circle. You know, right now we're not close, we're distant, they're out there. So thank you for that question. Yes, that was a very good question. Good question. Let me very frequent. So, come your name, Ashley. Ashley just asked a good question. So for those emotional states, which we were talking about, and Lucky helped us remember, you know, anger, irritability. She said, well, where should I put them? So I don't think he intended this to be about emotional states. We've adapted it because we're cool and creative. So I guess what I would do with it is if I find I'm high in criticism right now, I'd probably put it in the inner circle. You know, if I'm going around in a particularly like complaining or angry mood. If it's something I'm doing kind of, yeah, occasionally, you know.
I see.
Yeah, so use the circles as closeness as for amount. We're kind of using them for quantity.
Got it.
Good question. I've never done this before, and certainly it wasn't in the book, so we're creating along the way. So help me out, because this will all get incorporated. How many people need some more time? How many people need some more time? Okay, we'll give it another minute or two. And Manuel, we're going to be on slide 18 when we pick on up. I don't usually have a partner to do this, but it's so much fun to have somebody that they don't have to fill like I do. So one of the ways you can let me know you're done is let me have your soft eyes, and then I know you're done, rather than your head being here. And soft eyes are always great, right? Mm-hmm. So let's give it another minute. And by the way, as we're doing this, somebody's going to say something, and you're going to go, oh yeah, I want to put that on. So just keep adding. You can do this as much as you want and change it. Yeah.
I just want to make a comment. Thank you to this process in Hope4Life. Now that you were speaking about loneliness, isolation, and solitude, with this process, with my family here, Hope4Life is my family, I just noticed how far this community helped me to go through this. And I think that solitude for a long time, I think that I was thinking about the negative way of that word. So when I see and read everything that you put there and see my notes and I see my family here, I see that loneliness, isolation, and solitude can be as negative as I want, because
no, I want you to hold your, because you're really doing what we're going to do next. You're ahead of us. You're processing, and you've done exactly what I want us to do, which is you're tying it together and coming to some conclusions. So I'm going to start with you as soon as you know, because you just went way ahead of us. So the next one. Okay, let's stop for now. I'm going to keep the whole group together. I originally thought we might split off, but it's such a great all-together group. So I want you to just be curious, like you have been. You ask questions. I don't have to tell this group. And open-minded, and I want you to be compassionate, even looking at yourself, you know. So here are some, I'll just throw the prompts out just so you can marinate on them. We're going to start with, you know, we won't get to everyone, describing who and what are in your circles of connection and where you chose to place them. I would like you to be able to, as Patty was doing, make some observations, like what do you see as you look at these circles of connection? What do you see? What's shifted? What's different? And what have you done to stay connected with people? Like, I had to learn Zoom, if I wanted to be connected, I had to get comfortable. What have you done to stay connected? People have done all kinds of very creative things. You see some of the artists that are at home, amazing things they've done on YouTube to stay connected, amazing things. So what have you done to stay connected? Is there anything that you see in your collective life that's a little excessive? Like when I looked at my Zoom, it's excessive. I mean, it's a necessity, but it's a little overwhelming and excessive. So what's overwhelming and what might you want to decrease? What might you want a little less of? What might you want a little more of? Or is there something missing in your circles of connection? And kind of in general, what we're looking at is, what have you learned from, what do you learn from looking at this? And we won't be able to pull all of the golden threads through today, but hopefully we'll start a discussion and you can continue it. So I'm going to let Patty start because she really started anyhow.
Describe who and what are
You
the
pick one of
examples
those.
of connection. Okay, definitely Hope4Life. I am here in Miami by myself. I have a sister in Broward, and we have connections online, but the support group and the classes, they never leave me alone, never.
Did you draw? Do you have a drawing?
Yes.
Okay, just so you can, in the room we can see. Do you mind letting?
No,
Okay.
why not? So that is my exercise here. So part of the thing is Hope4Life, inside and out. So in the middle, really, I don't have nothing because we are family. They are in my mess. I can show how I live. I show them my struggles. So they are part of my life. There is no secrets because we have the freedom to speak about my life in my inner healing group. So I try to take everything that the life just bring me, just to put inside of me. How good is that for me? What do I have to just process? What do I have to live in the past? So it's like this is the objective today. I have loneliness, so I'm going to identify, I'm going to feel it. I allow just to discovering what part of my body is, how good is doing that to me, and I just let it go. And I have the freedom to call Giovanna or Jovi or Gigi or in the group say that happens to me.
So people can't see it, but I think what is very unique, everybody's is unique, no one in the room looks the same, but I think what's very unique about yours, Patty, is Hope4Life is in every circle. So you're very connected and this community is serving all of those needs everywhere. So Hope4Life is in the middle, is in the center, is in the middle, and is all around. Wonderful.
It is.
Okay. Someone else, and you can pick any of the prompts or you can tell me something different of what you noticed.
So this is what I wrote. I don't like this exercise of connections. It's tough, it's difficult. Lots of judgment towards self and others. Difficulty connecting with my real self, which I don't even know who it is, my emotions. A lot of tunnel vision only on what I'm aware of. Angry about connections, what I have, what I don't have. I just want out somehow, whatever that means, because I don't even know what that means. I hate connections. They're painful. They're difficult. Cannot do them well. And I need them like crazy, but I hate them. So I make a mess out of it. I'm just very inadequate. Sick of it.
Tell me your name.
Vivian.
Vivian. I'm just deeply, deeply, deeply touched by your honesty and your courage, and how hard that was to say that. I see the pain in your eyes, and you make me so aware of the impact of things, my actions. You know, I hand out this exercise to do. I don't know what it's going to, elicit, and for you it elicited, it kind of represents what you struggle with in life, how difficult connections are for you. And you're here, and you're connecting by your very words, making it mentionable. So I think you probably know a lot about the loneliness thing we're talking about, right?
I'm not even aware of the loneliness, to be honest with
You don't know where it fits in all of this. Yeah. And I was particularly touched when you that tension about, I need connections desperately and I want them, but I don't know how to do it. And they're very uncomfortable.
I don't think people get me.
People get you. Well, let's just do a little live check here. Does anybody in this room have any of the feelings about just kind of connecting is very difficult, looking at your connections and relationships is painful? Can anybody relate to that? And I don't know what's going on in Zoomville, but would you be willing to just keep your hands up, please? I think it's really important for people to know they're not alone. Yeah, I think there's a lot of hands up here. A lot of hands. A lot of hands. Does anybody want to say something from that place of connection that they'd like to share? And to share is something from you, from your heart. It's not about fixing Vivian. But does somebody have a share that they'd like to share from that place? Go ahead.
How absent from my life is any deep sense of connection to my own family. I have some sense of connection to my husband's family, to his sisters, his parents who have passed, but yet I knew them. But the connection to my own family is just so minimal, and where it's there, it's painful or void or icy.
So, Vivian, you're not alone, and in looking at a map of our connections, it also, remember what I said about the together and connected is connected to the lonely and the pain. You can't have one without the other. So looking at this, for some of us, brings up pain. Yes?
I would say that probably some of my loneliest times are in a room full of people I have met. I left many parties just by slipping out the back. And it's just from a sense of feeling that there are all these people around me and I really don't feel like what I would have to say would be interesting enough to them to hold a conversation. And so that's why many of my greetings are very short and casual. Even though I feel a sense of connection to people, I just greet them and move on. And I was thinking as my wife and I were filling out the loneliness survey that she probably thought that my total score would be 10 and that hers would be like 35 or something like that. And it's not really the case. Mine was like 25 or 30.
So your comment was, boy, I know that one, sneaking out the back door. I didn't know what that was about for a long time. Why did I sneak out the back door? Did it often. So you're talking about, we were talking about that earlier, about when I asked who's been in a room or at a party or in a group, and you just kind of feel like after a while you need to get out of there. And so you mentioned, so that's actually in that circle of, relational, I think, loneliness. Okay, could you go back for a second, Emmanuel? I skipped a stitch I want to pick up to the circles with all the words in them. Okay, what I forgot to say, so thank you, help me say it. With each of these circles, there is a very specific loneliness. So sometimes the loneliness is for an intimate. You know, how often, you know, I've heard myself or one of my girlfriends say, I'm not lonely in general, but I would like to have a partner. I'd like to have a companion. So with each circle, there's that specific loneliness, the loneliness for intimacy. Sometimes people say, I don't have a circle, I don't have any friends. You know, I don't have any friends. Or it could be I just moved here, or it could be that relationships are just not only difficult, but sometimes people don't understand, you know, how to even have a relationship or build. So it can be that relational emptiness, loneliness. And sometimes the loneliness is in the sphere of the community or the collective. I could be that person, I go to work, I do my thing, but, you know, I don't have a bigger sense of community, you know, like a Hope4Life, or even a community of social service. Big Brothers and Big Sisters is a wonderful example. And it's oftentimes in the community and in the collective where we feel the warm feeling in here, the feeling of people are saying, I belong here, I'm seen, it's a community. Sometimes you don't get that sense of that full connection and that sense of meaning unless you're in a group together. There's a good group, a healthy enough group, not a perfect group, you can have conflict. There's a saying in the world of those of us that are trained in groups, and it's a beautiful one, I like it a lot, and it says, if God would come back to earth, God would come back as a group. And I like, and as a group, God would come back as a group, and I like that notion because, you know, the healing that comes in groups is, and what's wonderful about groups is we are each therapeutic agents of each other. We are each healers of each other. You know, we never know who we're going to get the healing from. So what I had forgotten to say is, and this is kind of where we're honing in a little bit, that you can look at your circles of connection and ask yourself, you know, where am I lonely? Where is my loneliness at?
Nancy, we have a few people on Zoom that would like to
Okay.
comment also.
Oh, Nancy, can I say something? Jesus hung around in groups. Maybe he knew something.
Yes, he did. Yes, he
Maybe
did.
he had a
Yes.
bomb. Get him.
So Nancy.
Uh-huh.
So yeah. So this is coming from Elijah. He says, is there a initial loneliness that is overcome slightly by comforts that make you feel less lonely, like just consistently intake, before you get a gradual concept of the circle of connections?
Wow.
That's a good question.
So is there an initial loneliness?
Yeah.
Well, that's a great question. Boy, this is good.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I think you know, every time you go into a new situation or a new role, at least for me, there's some anxiety, and if I really look underneath that, there's probably some loneliness. Like, you know, I was very quick to say, okay, who do I know in the room? Oh, I know Simone, I know Chet, I know Joey. So I think that, yes, there's some loneliness in new situations. There's a wonderful story that Dr. Murphy shares in his book about a young woman that went off to Penn State, and she was very shy and relationships were very difficult for her, and she was not doing well the first couple years. I mean, she was doing very well academically, she was smart, and but she was really having a hard time there. And
Nancy, could you go back up?
yes, she was really having a hard time at school. So her parents were worried about her, she was struggling. So I think the second summer when she went back home, she connected to some communities. She was part of a gardening community, she was part of another spiritual community. So she came back to school a little different, but she still found the campus and the people kind of off-putting and not very connecting. So she did this amazing thing. And she was a very shy woman by nature. She decided to start on her own. She would rent a room off campus, and I forget, what did she call them? She called them space gatherings. I love it. And she would invite like 8 or 9 people to come, and her whole format was to have meaningful conversation with them. And what does it mean? So she would start the groups, and they were stranger groups, and the meaningful conversation was, what's going really well for you? What's going really well for you? That was question one. And the second question was, what are you really struggling with? And that was how she started doing these groups, and they really caught on. And after she'd have one group, she'd ask that group that was there to invite somebody on the campus that they didn't know to come to the next group. So that's a long way of saying that it was a long haul for this young woman to work through, her loneliness on this university campus. So I think that, we address our loneliness. It's very specific in situations. I don't think all loneliness looks the same. So, but as with anything, I think that anything that we're trying to cultivate, we like that word in positive psychology because we grow things. And I think that's how growth is, we grow. And I think it's, I say sometimes to my clients, you eat forth, tiny little step. You're not alone. Nobody grows and nobody goes straight up. So I think with anything, you kind of layer it in and, you learn a little bit at a time. Because you got to remember, everything we're talking about here is not intellectual learning. It's not intellectual. The brain, the cognitive brain, actually gets things they think 100 times faster before it trickles on down to the heart and the behavior. So, all this stuff is the heart and the behavior. We know what we're supposed to do in the head, but it just takes a long time, to live it and wear it. So I don't know if not having somebody in Zoom land, I don't know. That's my thoughts about that question.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else, Emmanuel, from Zoom?
No questions.
Anybody else want to
Right here.
Okay.
So I identify that because I'm the opposite of an introvert, I thrive in groups. But when the pandemic started, I had no idea what to do. And I realized that maybe, being isolated caused me anxiety because I was like, where's everybody? So I unconsciously became addicted to work. And I realized that it's because I was looking within work, everything that I used to get in the groups that I used to go to, like for recovery, church, because I was super involved. And like recognition, love, and all the things that I used to get from my groups. And for months I've been complaining, why am I so addicted to work and why I can't stop? But now I can make a conscious choice little by little to, turn things around because work became part of my inner group. And that's not very comfortable.
That's really valuable what you just said. So you saw it when you drew it.
Yes.
Right? It's
Yes.
awesome. Yeah, and that's what happened also to me when I saw I'm fatigued. I'm on 50 to 60% of my life's on Zoom, which is work. So thank you. You helped me too with that. Yeah, that we filled this time as best we could with whatever we could. And I wanted to mention too that when we went into quarantine, you want to talk about mandated loneliness? What was the first thing that happened when we got sent home to live? All of the articles that I was seeing, we had to learn what social distancing. You remember all the articles about what it was and how we were supposed to do it? What is social distancing? Mandated loneliness to me. We couldn't be with each other. What is quarantine? Which is still happening. When someone in our bubble gets COVID, we've got to quarantine. So these were all, we didn't think of it, that they're mandated little lonelinesses, right? Anybody else want to share something from the?
I think a lot of us walk around with masks so much that we're not relatable. And if we're not relatable, nobody can connect with us. So I think that the moment, and I tell my daughter this because she says that she has difficulty making friends. She says, Mom, how do you do it? And I said, because there's no pretension. There's no, I am what I am, it is what it is. But if you walk around with a mask, no one really gets to know you. And even if whatever it is that you have to offer is pain, somebody's gonna learn or benefit from or relate. In the end, relates. I guess it's being relatable in order to, and when you don't do that, like I tell her, that loneliness becomes depression.
That's an amazing comment of the obvious, of what has been the impact of these masks, you know, on our communication. And your point of it makes us unrelatable, and not just unrelatable, is, you know, we're not talking. We're certainly not talking as much. So that was a wonderful point to point out to us. One more, go ahead.
Yeah, so doing this doing this like work, I was realizing that one of the roots of, well, I don't know, maybe like you said anger, but loneliness is that for me, from my family, like my close family, like I realize, or I'm aware that like I'm always reaching out to them. I'm always the one that has to take the initiative, right? Or connect and yeah, be on the forefront of like actually having a relationship. And it's like, you know, when I either like I call them or I text, it's like, I don't know if it's the numbing but it's like, I feel like it's like, hello, like, are you even alive? You know? And like, they say they support me verbally, but when it comes to taking action and actually doing something, then it's like a lost cause.
That's a very, very important point. Is you're talking about non-reciprocal, non-mutual relationships. I fancy it, which means if you're the only one reaching out on your side, it always gets old. You're going to get burned out.
Yeah.
You're going to get tired. You're going to get resentful. And by the way, not just COVID related, because this always sounds so simple when I say it. All of your relationships, your healthy relationships in life, whether it's a girlfriend, a business partner, a lover, what you want to look for is reciprocal, mutual relationships where I reach out to you and you choose me back. You know, so yeah, it always feels. I mean, nothing's coming back at you. You're doing all the giving. You're doing all the reaching out.
Yeah, I'm constantly giving,
right.
And I'm not like receiving, and it gets me mad because it's like, man, don't you see, like, I love you, like, they don't see the greatness in me. They don't see, like, yeah, because I'm doing it for love. Like, it's not even about the money or, like, all these material, external things.
And not only do they not see the greatness in the love in you, the truth is they're not also seeing you as human, that you know, you need back. We're not, it's not a one-way street. So I'm paying attention to the time here.
Nancy, can we do one
They
more?
don't even see you. That's the thing.
Right, yeah, they don't see me like as a person.
Like,
I feel like I'm a wall or something.
Right.
Like,
Even in my case, in marriage or close relationships, if I'm not being heard, it's like if you're in an empty room and you're screaming and no one's responding, it just reeks of loneliness.
Exactly, yeah. It's the echo chamber.
yeah.
Did you have one more question over there, Emmanuel?
Yeah, I need my wife to see me all the time. No, really.
Yay, yeah.
It's a problem.
So let's take one more over there. You pick. You pick.
The echo chamber. I never heard that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, the echo chamber. Yes.
I've been here for almost a year and a half, and I've learned so much for myself. But today, I identify myself with what Vivian said. My level of
Yeah, go circle up. Human touch there. Be with him. Yeah. Take your time. Just breathe. Take your time.
my level of loneliness, I didn't know was so high. I've always felt it.
If anybody's moved to get up and get closer,
But I didn't realize
do.
it was so high. And then the exercise of connecting. Just really broke me. I fell asleep while I was doing it. And I realized my connecting circle is very limited. And with people that I have connections with, my relationship is terrible. After having COVID, and being sick for 4 weeks, I realized how frozen my heart was and how I treated myself and others because of my heart being so cold, so frozen. I feel relief saying what I'm saying.
And now you're here and able to acknowledge that and see it. And so was that period of COVID recently?
Yeah, it was 2 months ago, a month and a half.
You know, tell me your name, please.
Carlos.
Carlos, what a absolutely amazing sharing that is. And it's so interesting what you shared, because it's obvious that in your alone time with COVID, there was lots of loneliness, but there was a lot of solitude and soul searching and a lot of recognition, you know, of what is. And that's the starting point. The beginning of wisdom is calling things by their right name.
Wow. Can you
That's
say
not
that
me.
again loudly?
That's Confucius. The beginning of wisdom. Confucius, yeah. The beginning of wisdom is calling things by their right name. So you have the courage right here, right now, in this room of people and in this community here and online to share that. And that, just being able, you feel relief because it's so hopeful. It's so hopeful. You've got 5, 6 hands on you. Let it in. The warmth is, the connection's here. You're here. You're on that journey. You're on that journey.
Thank you.
Vivian, do you want to go over and join that pod and be part of that? No? Okay. Whew. Wow. There's nothing like being with a live group. Wow. I think I feel a little bit like Carlos and Vivian, like I've come alive being with all of you today. It's so much better than Zoomville. The eyes, the hearts, the sharings. And with each one, you know, we melt away some of that defensiveness, that edge, that tiredness by connecting at that level. So I know they're taking care of him. Let's see where we are, Emmanuel, in the slides. Let me see where we are.
Here in Hope4Life, I learned the phrase that they say, when you bring things to light, you diminish the power of darkness in your life. And that's exactly how we can experience the love.
Yes, when we bring things into the light, that is when they can be healed. You make me think there's a phrase from Rumi, the poet, you know Rumi? It's from Childhood Friends, and it's one of the stanzas, and it says, keep looking at the wounded place. That's where the light enters you. And don't think for a moment that you're doing it alone. Very beautiful. So I'm going to move on in the interest of, thank you all, we're running a little late, if you can stay with us. So, one voice, one touch, sometimes is all it takes. The power of one person reaching out, one pair of soft eyes, one person smiling. So we can be that one person. And the little piece of reality and research I want to tell you about, who knows about Big Brothers and Big Sisters? Well, Big Brothers and Big Sisters is one of the oldest. It's been around for about a century. And that's where they pair big adults with little kids. There's a lot of wonderful research on big brothers and big sisters because they've been around for almost 100 years. And I'll tell you what it says. Even after 18 months of having a big, it turns out that these kids tend not to get into drugs. They tend to finish school. They tend to make more of their life. They tend to be able to be in relationship. That's the impact of one. I think it's such a good example. And oftentimes, we're the one. You're the one. This is one of my favorite quotes, and you all have all the quotes about.
Yeah, do we have them out?
You have, yeah, they have them on your chair. They're on that pretty paper. If I had time, I was going to do something with them. But one of the things that I love about this quote, let me read it. A friend who can be silent with us in a moment of despair or confusion, who can stay with us in an hour of grief and bereavement, who can tolerate not knowing, not curing, not healing, and face with us the reality of our powerlessness. That is a friend who cares. And this is a situation which applies a lot when we're in recovery or when we're losing. There's so many things. We can't cure them, we didn't cause them, and we can't fix them. So this is that kind of a friend. This is just, this is a man, Dr. John Lederich, who at the real global level is an international peace builder. And let's see, let me let Emmanuel catch up with me to the next one. And I just thought some of his little he trains huge teams, about world peace and things like that. But I really liked what he said, which ties in with the other quote. To listen, to understand, to listen, to be open, to listen, just to be curious because I want to know you. Not listening to sell, not listening to fix, not listening to change. I like to call this deep listening, deep listening. And I've had clients over the years that say to me, I like your job, it's really easy. All you do is sit there all day and listen. And I understand that might be how it looks, but when you're really deep listening, you're really listening in a very different way, and it's a tremendous gift that we give people. The other thing he trains these big international peace builders, he says, speak from the heart, be authentic. And the last one's really important and kind of answered one of the questions that came from our Zoom audience, and that is stay at it. Good communication, building relationships, it doesn't happen all at once. It's a process. And be the one who persists a little bit at a time. Keep reaching out. Keep saying, I'm here to listen. Don't go away, keep knocking it. You'll find a door that opens at some point. This I love, and you'll see that there's some signs around the room, and whoever wants to take them, please do. Happy to chat. This comes from the book. This was actually the policemen in the UK did this. They made, can I have the next one, please, Emmanuel? The one with the chairs. The policemen in the UK came up with this project. I love it. They decided to make signs, and this is what they said. And they went all around the city, particularly the bus benches, and this is what they said. So I put them out in your community. Feel free to take the signs and make them. I love it. What a prompt out in the world. I think it's so terrific. And one of the points that Dr. Murphy was making is a lot of times, we look at people that aren't talking or quiet people, or maybe they're sitting there alone at a table, and we kind of make the assumption that they don't want to talk. And I'd say most of the time that's not true. They'd be all more than happy if you said hello and started a conversation. So this is kind of an encouragement to do that. Do it in your own life. The signs don't have to be fancy. And this is another thing along those, next one please. Okay, connection builders. Name, I actually have some of these here. I don't know, they were up front. We'll see if anybody took them. They're right here. Okay, take them. All it says is let's chat, happy to chat. You can make these, you can put it on those little things, the little sticky ones. And another one that I like too, that's really good, I didn't have time, it said, ask me about. And then you write 3 things, like ask me about my grandchildren, ask me about tennis, ask me about dogs. And it's really kind of a nice way, just in a name tag, that people have a way to bridge and approach you. These are all just some little ways that we can build togetherness. We're bringing it home now, kids. We're bringing it home, making it stick. Here is a really important thing. Everything in life is about a choice. And it's about, can we stay conscious? Can we not go away? So here he's talking about, if we can approach this moment, every moment, with intentionality and a mindset that we're going to double down and we're going to spend most of our time, the quality of our time and the quantity, with the people in our lives that really matter to us, okay? And that we're going to dedicate that time, not ignore the rest, but really make choices to dedicate our time to the people we love. And, you know, rather than getting lost in other things we might get lost in. Circles of connection. This one really, really hits me a lot. It shouldn't take a tragedy. It shouldn't take a tragedy like a pandemic, like a Hurricane Andrew. It shouldn't take that to remind us that we're better together, that we need to connect, that we need to hold hands, that we need to give service. It shouldn't take a tragedy. And again, may we resist the temptation, that very human temptation, to go back to whatever our busy set point was. And can we hold on to some of the golden kernels and the learning of this time? And last, I just wanted, last slide. Gratitude, it's my go-to all the time. It's not happiness that brings us gratitude. It's gratitude that brings us happiness. So I wanted to thank Latke and Giovanna and the whole community. I want to thank each of you that are here and out in Zoom land. I want to thank them as my neighbors and my friends, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you today.
Oh my goodness, this was amazing and this was incredible. So Nancy, she's thanking us, but we truly want to thank her. For many of us maybe have heard this before. Maybe of us have had some notion of this, but for bringing it home and making this morning worth waking up, worth coming here and getting together, and for giving us all the wealth of information that she gave us so gracefully. Wasn't it so gracefully, yes, so beautifully, so gentle, and you know, gentleness is so amazing, you know?
Genuine.
Yeah.
Real.
Real. Nancy, these are compliments for you.
Motherly.
So motherly. And it's an honor for us to have you here with us. And I hope that since we already opened the door, this will be one of many.
Absolutely.
And I just want to let you know that this is an extended invitation now, that we're here anytime. This platform, it's yours anytime. You want it, you need it, and you have so many open hearts, willing and hungry to hear, to learn, and to heal, and to, you know, move along. So truly thank you from the bottom of our hearts. also to all of our friends in Zoom, all of you that came, are so patient to be there, and we just want to thank you for being here too. We just want to thank you for taking the time. And you can email us, you can keep in touch if you have any questions. And Nancy, she is a therapist, so if you want to make an appointment with her, if you want to reach out to a different level with her, she's open, and is there any way we could put up
Yes, is there the information?
your if your information, if anyone wants to reach out to you, for those here, you guys are more than welcome to reach out to her, and if you feel like, oh wow, you know what, I would like to make an appointment with her, you know, this is what she does for a living, and I guess she's gonna bring out cards, and maybe we can put one on Zoom right now for the people that are there. Thank you again. Remember that we do have support groups here every Thursday, from 7 to 9-ish. We extend as far as we need and as the time allows it and the group needs it. But remember that. Also, I wanted to tell you, I don't know if we mentioned it during the break, we are trying to bring Trisha Frost with Kristen Toyne, which is another couple they work together with, to not bring her here in person, but we're going to have her in Zoom from the Sunday before Mother's Day, and she will talk and guide us through all the needs of mothers and what a mother does, and when we've had the lack of mothering. So we're trying to plan that for you guys, so just continue to stay tuned. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend and a wonderful week, and we'll see you soon next week. Enjoy. Bye.